27, Equal Education Law Centre and Equal Education have released a joint statement saying they are immensely distressed that the Department of Basic Education has failed to fulfil its promises to enable schools to reopen safely. The announcement was made last night that the opening of schools for grade 7 and 12 learners would be delayed by that week. This is learners, parents, teachers were preparing for a return today. The Western Cape contradicted that statement, saying it would go ahead with the opening of schools today. Well, to discuss, we're now joined by Section 27 Communications Officer Julia Chaskalson. Ms. Chaskalson, thank you for being with us. You say the missing of the deadline unfortunately mirrors the ongoing failures to provide textbooks, essential school infrastructure like toilets, scholar transport. So you're basically saying this is a broken department of basic education.
Right. Thank you, Francis, and good evening to your viewers at home. We think that this is kind of in line with the Department of Basic Education's track record with delivery of essential infrastructure and services to schools. With our partners, Equal Education and the Equal Education Law Centre, we wanted to draw attention to the fact that this has been going on for a very long time. Section 27 has actually taken the Department of Basic Education to court on numerous occasions for its failure to deliver textbooks, for example, to Limpopo learners in 2012. And in fact, there's a case ongoing about school sanitation and the need to eradicate pit toilets. So what we're seeing here isn't really unfortunately, it's very disappointing, but it's not shocking given the history of non-delivery from the department.
Yeah. Are you at all sympathetic given the mammoth task that's being undertaken here? You mentioned those pit toilets, and now government is saying the sanitation and the provision of water is a prerequisite. So this is a huge structural change that has to happen.
Sure, it's a very complex issue, and we don't want to undermine that. But nonetheless, the kind of transparency and the communication from the department could be clearer. What we saw this weekend was a complete breakdown in communications from the department. We saw that the department gazetted regulations on Friday afternoon with all the preconditions about school safety, but then kind of chopped and changed its mind very late last night, which led to the confusion and anxiety of pretty much everybody in the system: learners, parents, caregivers, teachers. So while we do acknowledge that this is a mammoth task, this is something that should have been fixed a very long time ago, particularly when we're thinking about school sanitation. The minimum norms and standards case was kind of concluded about 4 or 5 years ago, and that was binding on the department to deliver decent and dignified and safe toilets to schools throughout the country. But we know that there are close to 4,000 schools across South Africa which only have pit toilets, So while we're kind of sympathetic to the complexity of the task at hand and the difficulty of the situation and the urgency of the situation, this is something that should have been fixed a very long time ago.
So you are close to the ground in terms of knowing how bad the situation is at many of the schools. Do you see these schools reopening? I mean, we're now talking about the 8th of June, if they're ready, but you're talking about many that still don't have sanitation, don't have water. Those are now prerequisites.
Right. So we have a number of partner schools in the Limpopo province, and preliminary reports from those schools, the picture doesn't look great. Personal protective equipment hasn't been delivered in a lot of cases. Many of these schools rely on pit toilets. Many don't have reliable access to water, and there've been a number of promises made from the Department of Basic Education about to schools that need it. But the department is running on the strategy of just in time. And what we've seen is that just in time doesn't work. We need proper plans, we need thought out plans, and we need implementation, and essentially for the department to put its money where its mouth is and to kind of really, I guess, sort of put its weight into the promises that it's making right now. The reports that we're seeing from schools in Limpopo, even some schools in the Western Cape, there's a lot of ground that we need to cover in a very short amount of time, and we're really urging the department to take this seriously and move quickly.
Before we let you go, your quick comment on the decision of the Western Cape to open up today regardless.
Right. I mean, the Western Cape was working on the information that it had received on Friday. I can't talk to kind of politicking or the political forces at play here, but all of the provincial education departments had received the gazetted regulations on Friday, which said that today schools would open. And a number of provinces, in fact, all of the provinces are working really hard to get schools ready. But in terms of procurement, in terms of delivery, there are delays, and some provinces are unfortunately I guess, kind of waylaid or at a different starting point to a province like the Western Cape. But it's a very complex situation. I can't say whether kind of schools in the Western Cape that are ready to open shouldn't reopen, because learners need to go back to school. Learners need to engage. Learners need to be kind of growing and developing educationally. So it's a very complex situation.
It is indeed. Thank you for your time. So very critical there of government, of the department, and also this very late communication. Julia Chaskalson from Section 27.